Mm-hmm.
Because there's so many
Personally,
different
I
things.
self-identify as a Apache helicopter.
I thought you personally identified as an asshole.
Well, I do too, but that's too common for me.
Howdy, folks, and welcome to episode 505 of the Dead Robot Society. Paul Lee Cooley here, and joining me today, as always, Mr. Terry Mixon. How you doing, Terry?
Hey.
I feel like I need a surgical mask, even though we have bits and bytes separating us for miles and miles and miles.
It's not that kind of thing. It's not that kind of thing. It's a reaction to a vaccine.
Yes, but I'm sure in your case, it's become airborne, virulent, and all sorts of other things because you're just that weird.
It sounds like something Paul E. Cooley would write. You know, a vaccine goes airborne and the end of the universe is at hand.
Where even the deer have chicken pox.
Where deer pox kills off humanity.
Deer pox. Is there such a thing? Is deer pox?
Where carnivorous deers begin coming out of the woodwork to eat humanity.
No. Beer pox. That's even better. Beer pox. Millions and millions of micro craft brew drinkers get infected.
There you go.
Oh, I like this. I like this idea. Ooh, wow. As someone who enjoys craft beer, it's a little bit throwing myself an explosive or two to grab. But it would be really funny just to have, like a million hipsters around the country just go insane. Like, just imagine.
You can tell they're going out when all their beards and mustaches just start, crinkling up.
All that hair product starts to really damage the way the hair looks.
Yes. Oh, look at my mustache.
Yeah, right. So on that note... What the hell have you been up to besides incubating plagues?
I finished writing the 9th Empire book, which the title changed because Clan Wars just didn't suit. So it's going to end up being Hidden Empires now.
And Donna was so happy about that title.
Well, she was a lot happier with that title than An Inconvenient War, which is like got this word that's that long in the middle. She's not too pleased with me when I do that.
And people ask me why I stick to one more titles as much as possible. So you finished that.
Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
Oh my God. Can you imagine trying to, Scott Pond, I would send you a bottle of whiskey if I ever titled a book that, because holy crap. No. How do you
Oh my God. I got nothing on that.
Yeah. You'd have to have like some odd shaped book just to fit the title on there. So you finished the book. So where is it in the publishing pipeline?
I've still got the beta readers going to give me their comments on the last half of it. While they're doing that, I'm rereading the first part to make sure that I got all the stuff that I wanted to pulled out. And I probably should go ahead and read the thing all the way through and make sure that I catch all the little glitches. So I'm thinking it's going to be published the last week of this month.
Okay. I gotcha. That sounds like a plan.
It's going to be the last one that I use beta readers for. The beta reader team that I have they're going to get transitioned to being an advanced reader team. So they'll still get the books, but they won't have to actually go through and, fix things like that. I'm going to actually have a copy editor do that, which I should have been doing for years, but I'm slow.
You're just lazy.
I am.
You're just totally lazy.
So after I publish this particular book, then I'll send it off to the copy editor and get it proofread.
And then you'll be back to work on this short story.
I'm halfway done with the short story now. I've got a total of 3 short stories that I've got to write before I start writing the next novel. So it'll take me a week.
Anthology land. Is that how is that a nice break?
It is. I'm enjoying writing these short stories because I'm writing a story with a character I've never written before in a universe I've never written it in before. So I'm getting to make it all up as I go along, and that's kind of fun. I'm writing in first person, which I haven't done in years. That's fun. It's catching me though, because I keep going back through and going, nope, I put third person in there. Gotta pull that out.
It's really funny you mentioned that because we talked about this in the pre-show. I too am working on a story for an anthology, and it too is in first person. And
so when the monster crunches him up, you're gonna feel those bone crunchings.
So it has been really fun to get back into that because then you get to, if you got a character who's in this character anyway, notices strange things that seem strange to them, which the reader or a person in that universe may not find strange. So I'm kind of playing with the character's observations of things a little bit. And I'm kind of prevaricating at between two voices right now. One is which is very simple. And the other one is simplified, but still has a good grasp of the science that's going on behind certain things. I'm vacillating between those two because I really haven't decided what kind of story I'm trying to tell yet. But I am having fun doing it, though.
That's the important part.
Yeah. So now, yes, I want to go write some more short stories.
They're always fun.
I think if they're fire and forget, you don't have to worry about them too much. Like if I were to write a Soul and Beyond thing, it's canon, but it's not canon. It's some side trip we're taking that has nothing to do with the main books. And so it's something I can just kind of play with and then make it go away.
One of the things that I'm enjoying about writing the short fiction that I'm doing first is I can see writing other stories set in this universe.
That is never a good thing for people like you, Terry. I wouldn't do it if I were you.
It's always usually a bad thing. One more thing to add to my list of things to do. I could certainly write more short stories in it.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to be.
The main character, I didn't know this when I started writing. I'd kind of intended for the main character to be human, but as I started writing it, I was like, no, he's not human. He's more like a minotaur. He's really big. Has big horns. Totally non-human. So, nope, there's no but to it. It's fun writing an 8-foot tall character with horns. As you might imagine, he can't move through crowds without being spotted very easily.
No, I wouldn't think so. I would not think so. Yeah. So urban fantasy?
No, science fiction.
Science fiction with Minotaur.
Well, their race is compared to minotaurs.
Okay, fair enough.
Some of the same stylisms, and because human beings like putting names on things that look like other things, humans call these people minotaurs, but they're not.
Okay, fair enough. I just look like it. Yeah, that's a fun place to play. Especially if you're dealing with human society, that'd be kind of fun.
It's going to be fun. It's mostly a human society, although I mention a race of chickens. Basically, the character uses some pejorative terms for a race that he doesn't particularly care for. And that's the reason he's where he is because he wasn't going to stay where he was, and he just calls them chickens. So I can foresee, some of the stories that I write in this particular universe being kind of fun to write that way, especially since the main character is now going to be teamed up with a human child. Okay. There's going to be all kinds of room for people staring at each other going, what are you talking about?
I guess I didn't realize Zag wasn't human.
When I started writing, I intended him to be human.
Okay.
Within the first paragraph, I was like, nope, he's not.
Yeah. See, this is your problem.
I think it's a plus.
You could have written this perfectly straightforward thing. Now you've completely opened up this can of worms that you can explore in a short story, which is then going to become a novelette, which is then going to become a novel.
No, it's going to become a short story because it's going to wrap up at about 7,000 words.
Mm-hmm.
I already know how this one is going to end. And believe me, bad things are about to happen. Anytime you've got a child messing with one of those little things on the side of buildings that, you use for window washing, it's probably a bad thing, and bad things are about to happen.
That's kind of frightening. The very idea is frightening.
I could see her going up there and just yanking a lever and the thing just plummeting down, and the bad guys that are harassing the main character, the ropes are going to wrap around their legs and yank them straight up the damn building.
Wow. Terry's actually writing a cartoon.
Baby. I might put Acme in there.
Yeah, you might put Acme in there. That sounds fun, though. I can't wait to read the finished product.
I'll send it to you when I'm done.
Yeah, I'm sure you will.
You can go, this is a pile of crap.
Yeah, I always say that. I am still waiting for artwork. So
he's extended his vacation. He's not going to be back until next year.
The goddamn audiobook. The worst audiobook experience of my fucking life, and now it's sitting on my hard drive with no place to go.
When does the guy get back?
Hopefully this week. Anyway, that notwithstanding, I have been cranking on TB4 and this new short story, and I'm getting a couple thousand words on TB4 every day, so I think I'm probably in okay shape to hit my self-imposed August deadline. I think I'll be okay for getting the first draft done by then. I have no idea how much stuff I'm going to have to cut. I have no idea how much stuff I'm going to have to add. And at this point, I don't really give a crap because I'm having a good time. And at the same time, it's helping me figure stuff out. So if I have to cut a bunch of garbage, then it's not a problem. But I've fallen in love with these two characters and I want to enjoy my time with them. So
nothing wrong with that at all.
Yeah. So at some point, I'm still planning on getting back to Quantum Personality Disorder and what's the other one I'm writing? Trident. Not to mention Static. So I'll be working on all those in some way, shape, fashion, or form. I write a couple thousand on TB4, and then when I get tired, I go write something else. So that's working for me. So I'm going to keep doing it.
Keep rocking it, man.
In between day job shenanigans. These will hopefully be good shenanigans, though. Anyway. So when you were talking about changing your character into Minotaur, that automatically can add new and interesting plot complications.
Yeah. His ship is an old human smuggler, so it's incredibly cramped for him to get around in.
Perfect. So we should have a discussion about that very topic. How do you keep life from being too easy for your characters?
I like talking about plot complications.
Dude, you are a walking plot complication.
That's what my wife tells me.
Let's go see what the two of us said a while ago. I am going to bring up a rather complicated topic.
Fire away.
I don't know about this. We'll see how this goes. Characters. When you throw them into a plot, do you give them the tools to solve the plot problems right then? Do you give them the know-how to solve the problems that are coming at them? Or do they have to make it up as they go along?
I think it's much more entertaining if they have to make it up as they go along. At least for me.
You were talking about, what was the movie earlier on the pre-show?
Was this, we were talking about MacGyver?
Yeah, when you were talking, you said Equalizer 2, right?
Oh, Equalizer 2, yeah.
Yeah, it's more, has all these touches of MacGyver, cold-blooded killer with MacGyver instincts. And that brought up the question. In fiction, a lot of what you see is the characters have a certain skill set, and it's completely useless in certain situations, or they have a broad area of disciplines and they put those together to solve a problem. So which is better?
They both have their pluses and minuses.
Okay, where is it?
I think it really, honestly, I think getting down to both of those things, it really depends on the circumstances you're putting the characters in.
Okay. So let's take the MacGyver instance. You have a broad area of expertise, and you use that to put together whatever whatever solution there is to the current problem at hand. How do you do that? And maybe more importantly, when do you do that?
How I do that it really is it's dependent on the set of circumstances I'm going to introduce to the character and who the character is. A lot of times my characters don't have a broad base of knowledge. They have very specialized knowledge, or they're ignorant to a great degree. Like Princess Kelsey, for example, I threw her off the deep end when I wrote that first story. She didn't have the skills to cope with any of the problems that I threw at her.
No, she didn't.
She had to make it up as she went along and just do the very best she could with whatever help she could get, whatever things she could manage to figure out going along. I don't know that I've ever had a jack of all trades type of character, because those kind of guys don't appeal to me so much. The MacGyver of having all this wide ranging knowledge. I'd rather have a bunch of individuals with specialized knowledge that I can combine into a group to come up with some wild problem solving.
Okay.
That's more entertaining to me.
So you're more on the side of team oriented solution.
Yes, very much so.
You space opera bastard and all your many characters. My God, what is wrong with you?
Too many characters. Have to have like 14 series now to fill all the damn character slots.
Oh, I don't even want to hear it. We're not even going to go there right now. Anyway, it's funny because in the team books, that's exactly what I do too. I make it so that whatever skills they have are useless, but they can kind of get their heads together and come up with an idea that they have no idea whether or not it'll work. And I love doing that too, because it just adds more suspense to it. Will this really work? And the answer is, of course it will, just not in the way you think it will. And oh, by the way, it's going to have some ramifications that y'all didn't even think about. So I love putting the characters in that kind of pressure cooker where they have no idea what the hell's going on. You talked about ignorance. Suspense requires ignorance to a certain degree. That's part of the fun of it.
You can also have very knowledgeable, very capable individuals be caught in situations that they're having to scramble to figure out an answer that may be outside their skill area. Next week, I'm going to go see the next Mission Impossible movie. And you can almost guarantee something in that is going to involve some very, very capable people being stuck in a situation where their skills are put to the test in ways they never envisioned them being done before.
Yeah. And that is part of the fun. That is part of the fun. And that's kind of the allure of that entire show way back when it was on. Was what are these people going to do? How are they going to do it? And, you know, how are they going to come up with this solution to solve this problem? How are they going to accomplish the mission with all this extra stuff going on?
And then in the middle of your mission, you introduce something that completely complicates everything they thought they were doing. And they've got to take, it's like when you're juggling a set of balls and somebody off screen just throws another ball into the thing. You're like,
I didn't know the president of the United States was coming that weekend.
I'm not really. Well, I'm not really.
Yeah, the whole Scooby-Doo thing.
The other guy standing here holding his own mask. Well, I guess I really am him.
That should have been in the movie Clue. That scene should have been in the movie. Excellent movie. Absolutely hilarious. I guess no love. Because
I loved the Clue movie.
Clue was just
I love the
hilarious.
butler.
Yes. Absolutely. He was a diva.
Even though he wasn't, dressed up like he was in Rocky Horror.
Tim Curry.
Tim Curry is awesome.
Tim Curry is awesome. He was absolutely a great actor. No matter what you put him in, he was awesome. He was just great that way. Anyway, when you write the story, I guess part of the plot is going to depend on what the characters can and can't handle. You agree with that?
Yes. And you want to make sure that the important things are either just beyond their capability or chaotic enough to where they're going to have to scramble. You can't just hand it to them. You've got to make them work for it.
Yeah, they've got it's not interesting if everything goes smoothly. But what was it? Can we get this done? No. Can we get it done? Yes. And then yes, but that but is really the trick. That's what the
my personal favorite is no and furthermore.
And furthermore. But it's just like in the movie Aliens, when they get to the end, everybody thinks they're just going to blast off. It's like, no, I'm going back for Newt. Well, nobody thinks about all the complications that's going to cause. And then, of course, you get to the ship and you're like, oh, yeah, we solved that, but, big but coming. I didn't forget I said that. That's another really good way to do it, where the characters have no idea what is come along as part of their the ramifications of what they did to solve the problem. But there has to be something they can solve.
Yes, unless it's a horror movie, in which case maybe not.
Yeah, one of Cooley's books.
Some horror books are not can you beat the problem? It's can you manage to die while standing on your feet, screaming defiance?
It's just, can I survive? That's number one. It's not even killing the baddie. It's first survival. Then it gets to that question. Am I going to die, and how am I going to die? Am I going to die on my knees begging for, a reprieve, or am I just going to go balls to the wall? And that also is going to depend on what the character is. So I like playing in that space with characters and story is figuring out exactly what these people can do to run down a solution to a problem. And stories I like are, there's always a problem of some sort. I can't imagine there not being, because otherwise you don't have a plot. There has to be something going on to move things around. But that also means you as the writer have to pay attention to how you're moving the characters through these pieces. It doesn't matter if you're an outliner or a plotter. You have to figure out how to navigate these characters through these scenes to get told what needs to get told and to discover what needs to get discovered to move on to the next scene. And that's part of the journey. At least that's how I write it.
A story is a character in a setting with a problem, and trying to solve that problem is a series of tries and fails. Or they succeed at something and it introduces a whole new set of complications for them. Because nothing is ever given easy.
Yeah, I'm getting to that point where I'm about to dive into that in the next Black Book, is all the unintended consequences of what they do, where they had no idea it was going to do what it does. And figuring those things out, because it just expands the mythos of the creature and everything else. But that's going to be fun. That's what the readers are really going to want to read about.
I can see your characters now. Really? Really?
It did what? I think that's going to be a lot of fun, because it sets a lot of these other things up to where when I finally drop the hammer, I'll have foreshadowed enough of it where I can combine it in a way that hopefully the readers weren't ready for, and either of the characters.
I heard somewhere online just fairly recently that about the 3/4 mark in your story, you should introduce a set of complications that perhaps the reader doesn't see coming. Maybe you as the writer can, but if you do a change up on them at about that point in the story, it's a good pivot into making them race to try to solve whatever unforeseen complication you've introduced and still accomplish the goals that you have now pretty much upset the apple cart on. I'm doing that in the current novel that I'm in. It's adding a few chapters to what I have to write, because now they're busy scrambling, looking to try to find an answer to what I've done to them.
Yeah. And my solution is they don't.
I think what the person that recommended this recommended doing it not necessarily for the reader, but for the writer, so that you can introduce something that shakes up the story for you and makes you go, oh, here we go. Yeah. Let's do this.
We're out of the swampy middle. Time to mess with people's brains,
including your own. You can really shake up things for your story and make it fresh for yourself and still write like a bat out of hell coming into the end of it. If you shake that little magic 8-ball and go, ooh, there's the answer.
Yeah, the last fourth of Destruction pretty much wrote itself. It just was not a problem because I no longer had to think about all these things because now I had all the pieces in place and I knew where those pieces were pointing me and I knew how to put together the puzzle. I still had to make a couple decisions, pretty big, but the book more or less wrote itself from then on, but it was more complications. And that made a big difference. Made a really huge difference in how the book worked out. What are you doing?
I was seeing if I could find the name to go with that. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to.
It's got to be a pretty general Google search there, buddy.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to find it. It was worth looking to see if something popped up. But yeah, I can't remember who said it or where I heard it, but it sounded like great advice to me. And it took where I was going with this particular novel because I was like, okay, yeah, I know where we're going now. God, I still got to write the ending of this. I've got to go ahead and actually solve it out. Oh, no, I can do this. Yep. Holy shit.
Yes. It's like somebody was talking about Derelict, and after we solve the major problem, then everything after that introduces new issues. Everything that they try and do. And some of that stuff, I did not know how that was going to work. But it was fun because I knew what had to happen, but I didn't know how it was going to happen. So that kind of revitalized me into writing that stuff because I was through the swampy middle at that point. Completely through the swampy middle. I think Tomb was actually the swampy middle of the entire series. So now I can move on to bigger and better things.
So plot complications. When you're coming up with stuff at the tail end of your stories to go ahead and complicate things around for them, is there a process you go through to make that happen?
For me, no, not necessarily. I know, like, depending on what the book is, I know there's going to be some major confrontation, right? That's going to lead to the denouement. We're going to have some kind of confrontation. It's either going to get resolved in a certain manner or not, depending on if I'm writing a series or a standalone book. I just kind of follow my nose. If I don't have to set up landmines because everything's been already laid down and I don't have to worry about another book coming behind it, then everything is just gravy. It's just following it down the pike. And if I start thinking about the story that way, then it just leads that way too. That these are the things that need to happen in this confrontation to drive toward the ending. And then the ending changes based when I get into that complication or introduce that last major complication. Of course, if you have multiple characters, it gets compounded a little bit because now you have all these points of view to juggle with new information or whatever else that goes on with it. Do you actually plan those things?
No, I'm a pantser, so there's not a whole lot of planning. I have an idea when I'm writing the story of where I think the ending is going to go, and often I'm nowhere near it by the time I get to the end. It's honestly like knocking over a domino, but not having just one little path for the domino to go. Having different paths that it might go depending on how they fall. Gotcha. And it's every set of circumstances, the outcome is slightly different than what I envisioned when I start writing a scene. And over the course of a novel, it changes everything. It's like playing, what was the name of the old game that you used to, where you'd whisper a message to someone else and they'd whisper it to somebody else? Telephone. You do that, and by the time it gets to the end of the thing, it's completely unrecognizable from what it started out as. And you would never get to the end of that game without the story, without even a simple sentence changing radically. And for me, writing is like that. Every scene, I have an idea of where I think it's going to go to get to the end of this book, and it changes where the arc of the story is going. By the time I'm more than halfway done, what I thought the original ending of any novel was is completely unreachable. I have moved so far off course that it's not going to happen. And I've got to come up with a brand new ending and figure out how that's going to tie into everything else that I've done and how it's going to tie into the future. Or in the case of the stuff that I'm introducing in this novel, I just introduce something. I say, wouldn't it be cool to introduce this here? And I introduce something cool, and I'm going, how am I going to use that in the future? How is that going to tie into anything? I have no idea.
And then there's the other question: does that need to be in this book?
Now, you should always ask yourself that. But in this particular case, they were things that were introduced that, while I have no idea what the ultimate outcome is going to be of introducing them, they were appropriate for the plot that was happening at the time, and they will feed into the story. I just don't know the details yet.
I think that's really a hard trick to learn. What you should include, and what you should cut. I think it's very difficult to learn how to do that, and it takes a while at doing it. And sometimes it's your beta readers or your editor is going to tell you, hey, this is great, but it doesn't belong here. You know, you need to rip this out and write this as its own thing, or, you know, change what series you write this in. This idea is awesome. Use it somewhere else. So.
Yep, I don't listen to that kind of stuff. I just bumble my way through it.
I know. You just fumble all over the place. So there's a myriad of ways to do that, but the complications at the end, I often end up writing in the middle of a book. I mean, that's where I start the book. Usually when I'm writing, I end up starting in the middle of the story, or that's what gives me the idea for the book. It's in the middle. It's never at the beginning.
Yeah, that's true. In this particular case, using the book that I'm currently writing as a generic example, I had an idea by a quarter of the book. By the time I finished a quarter of the way in, I said, here are some of the major plot complications they're going to have to solve toward the end of the book. And when I got to them and I said, how can I turn this up to 11? How can I just go ahead and take what I already was doing and twist it in a way that it changes everything, both for me as the writer and for the readers? That's hard.
Cruel. That's because you're mean and cruel.
I'm a capricious god.
I admire your capriciousness. Your characters don't. They hate you. Do you want a happy god or vengeful god? Happy god, happy god. Line from The Simpsons. Anyway, this always comes back to the same thing, though. Are you writing a series? Are you writing a standalone? Because they're two different things, two very different things. And it depends on how big of a hole you want to leave. That last plot complication, if it comes to you, could be the setup for a next book. Is there a next book?
Yeah.
Is there more story here? Is there really more story here with these characters, or is it time to say goodbye to them?
Even if you're writing a series, introducing these plot hooks, there are a number of them that don't get used. You put things out there and go, oh, this is cool. We'll put this in here because this would be awesome. And then you get to the end of the book and you go off into left field and you never come back. You never actually get back to that plot hook that you left there. So it's just going to hang out there forever until such time as you may wander back through there and go, oh, hey, look, I can use that. And the readers will say, that man was a genius for putting that in there. 4 books ago, he put that in there, and now he's picking it back up. He must be outlining like a bastard. Nope. I'm just stumbling through the minefield, seeing what bombs I set off.
I set up a mine of destruction, and we see the ticker going off. And I'm like, mention it just in one paragraph and then move on. And it's something they have to deal with in Trident. And it's there for a reason. I did not know at the time why I put it there. But now I do. And it's going to actually be kind of a story component, because there's some information they need to get, and it was the only way to get it to them. So
from the grave.
Yeah. Anyway, little things like that. Yeah. Planning those landmines in a series are so much fun. So much fun. It's like, oh, I know where this is going to go. Or, hey, did I set that up? Yeah, let's deal with that because I need another bomb to go off, like you said.
When I wrote the first book, the very first scene in Empire of Bones, I introduced a character, even though I may have mentioned his name, but he had no point of view in that particular first chapter. I introduced a character that was going to come into play 5 books later and be used as a bad guy because I'm a douche. It's because I wandered back through that field and go, oh, I need somebody that's just a real asshole. I seem to remember writing an asshole. Here we go.
Find this asshole. Which asshole is it?
Exactly so. Yeah. Exactly so.
So I think that's just so much fun to do. And you just got to pay attention. But the trick is, do not make it a major thread, is to mention it and have it kind of die off. And maybe you don't know what that is now, but you know it's something. But if you do
and write it down, write it down.
Write it down. Keep that story Bible up to date, Bucko. So the mentioning that and basically then distracting the characters away from it, if you can do it deftly, then you're in good shape. And quite often, if you watch the TV shows, like in episode 3 or 4 of a season, they will introduce a villain and you don't see them again for so many episodes. And then you start seeing them more frequently, or they get referred to more frequently. And at the end is basically the confrontation with the villain they've been messing with the whole time. And that's another formulaic approach to do that, but they're laying those landmines in that series. And I've seen a couple series have been smart enough to lay those landmines in a previous season and then come back to it. And it's like, man, the writers knew what the hell they were doing when they did this. Maybe not. I don't know.
Sometimes they put landmines out there and never come back.
I think it really depends just how large the landmine is.
The one that sticks in my mind is from Star Trek: The Next Generation. They had an episode where they showed a bunch of Starfleet people being mind controlled with little stinger things sticking out of the back of their necks. That was something that would have to be dealt with going forward, and then it was never mentioned again.
Interesting.
Ever. It happened, it vanished, was never touched again.
Interesting.
Pretty big shit.
Well, think about how they got introduced to the Borg. Then the Borg did not show up in any. I don't think they showed up to like season 2 or 3, where they really showed up. They showed up in the first season, but they only really showed up as a opposing force, and I think season 2 or 3. Like they had one episode to introduce them, and then they left that alone.
Yeah, but in this case, this was something that the main characters were aware of. They knew that this was a threat. And then seasons went by and it was never mentioned again. So it's not like it was the Borg, which were very distant, which you could have that space of time
right
before you actually ran into them. In this case, a writer introduced something and everybody else said, that's a really bad idea. We're not going down that
road. Plenty of those. But
this one made it into print. It made it into the series and didn't get cut.
Okay. Yeah, I gotcha. Was it a cool idea at least?
If it was going to shape how the upcoming seasons went, possibly.
Okay. War of the Parasites.
Yeah. Who's being controlled? What are they doing?
Oh, I remember that episode. It's the one where they've infected all the bigwigs of the Starfleet Command, right?
Exactly. That is exactly the one. They mentioned that, and then it was never touched again.
Okay, I remember that episode now. Yeah. Yeah, the who's who thing. It suddenly becomes a Cylon deal. Who's really who's real and who's being controlled? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That would have been a big change for where the series was going, and obviously somebody made a decision that was not the road they were going down.
I probably decided it was too goddamn complicated because it would have to involve them going to a lot of planets.
It would, but somebody should have made that decision before they filmed that episode. Somebody dropped the ball on that one. That was a pretty serious plot discontinuity. Discontinuity. There we go.
Yeah, I wonder how many people actually noticed it besides you. You know how TV shows work. We got to get 22 episodes out. We need a filler. That's what it was. That's how this shit works. There's a filler. And there are several episodes of Buffy like that where they bring something up and they don't ever touch it again. And that's fine. Because as long as the characters don't like make a humongous deal out of it, there's something they got to deal with in 5 minutes from now. So there's an art to it. There's an art to it. I don't think I've mastered it yet, but I think it's getting easier and easier to do.
This is one of those skills where you may be afraid to try it, but you need to try it, folks. You need to actually make the attempt to make it work, because you're not going to learn how to do this unless you do it.
Yep. Step out of the comfort zone. Don't write from A to Z. There's going to be A prime and A beta and kind of like this. What else on the way there?
Somehow the way I see this working, you remember for a while they were having a commercial about one of the cable network's sports seasons was coming up. And they had the guy out there, the golfer is out there, and he's lining up his shot. He draws back, and then a football quarterback just comes out of screen and just and knocks him completely out the other side. Oh, God. That's how these things need to happen to you.
Godzilla versus Bambi. It just needs to be the Bigfoot going, and that's it. Have you ever seen that film?
It was very short.
Yeah, it's like 20 seconds long or something. It's got Bambi in the forest doing Bambi thing, and then suddenly Godzilla's foot just comes down and squashes it, and that's the end of the film. It's just damn funny for the shock value. But yeah, that's the lightning bolts hit. When the lightning bolts hit, you just gotta let them strike and kind of go with it and see if it works.
One of the things that I've heard people recommend that I'm still not to the point of doing it is when you get to places like that, you take the first 3 answers to the solution and discard them. The first 3 things that come to mind, and you just nope.
That's easy.
And then you come up with something that's a little outside the box that way. Me, I'm a different kind of writer. I'll make it hard, but I'm not necessarily going to go ahead and just discard the obvious solution. I'm just going to make them really have to fucking work for it.
Well, what we needed to solve the problem is over this moat full of person-eating crocodiles in the alien sanctum where they're holding worships or rituals will sacrifice us if they catch us. And then we have to break into the armory to get what we need.
Pretty much, yeah. That's basically, you've outlined the entire, end of my story. Thank you.
The quest is to get to Mordor. A funny thing happened on the way to Mordor.
One does not simply walk into Mordor.
Yeah, one does not simply throw the goddamn rings in. You got to, make it complicated. Anyway, plot hole token.
Speaking of that, a pair of short guys threw a ring into my backyard this morning.
As hot as it's been here, it doesn't surprise me. It was 108 Saturday or Sunday.
It was obnoxious.
It was bad. I mowed Saturday. It was hot. It was damned hot. Anyway, now we're back to weather again, like I was talking about earlier. There's always so much fun that you can have, both in the plot point and from the character point of how the problems come up and how they get solved. And that's the mainstay of suspense thriller, is all about creating those problems. How are these folks going to solve this issue? That's what it's all about.
I think that one of the things that we as writers can do is we can keep the characters unbalanced. We can keep them just a little off kilter, so they're having to scramble. It doesn't necessarily have to be an impossible mission that they have to carry out. But if you introduce a complication that makes them have to do something unexpected, that have to improvise on the spot to try to pull victory from a failure that's coming in, that's what we should be doing. It really should never be a straight line. At every scene, every chapter, you should be looking at it going, can I introduce a little bit of a sideways twist here to make them work a little bit harder at making this work out for them?
Yeah. Oh yeah. But that's where everything gets interesting. All the interesting shit happens on the way to the goal, not necessarily at the goal itself, because you have to build up to the goal. But really, I think the journey is much more, the journey of the quest, so to speak, if we're going to put in that parlance, is much more important than the actual end game, because the story happens in between. So that's where
a funny thing happened on the way to the bank heist.
A funny thing happened on the way to the Colosseum. I think is the play, the Roman play, the play about Rome. I can't remember. Anyway, somebody will call it in. I think it was even made into a musical. It's a big Broadway thing. Something funny happened on the way to the Colosseum. Anyway, that notwithstanding, yes, you have to make it a confusing morass of crazy along the way. That's what makes it fun. That's how I write.
That's how we all write.
Yeah, to a large degree, I think we do. I think that's where our brains are going to go. We want to make the story interesting for ourselves as well as the people who read it. It's a big deal. So don't be afraid. Try it.
What's the worst that can happen?
Do you think that's easier to do in long fiction than short fiction?
To introduce complications?
Yes.
Yes. Because with short fiction, you've got such a short runway to introduce those twists. You can't really do more than one or maybe two if you're lucky. Because there's just not enough foreshadowing space to make that worthwhile in my mind. Somebody's undoubtedly going to tell me I'm wrong, but I'm not an expert on short fiction to begin with. If I had to try to make a short story have those interesting twists that I can do in a novel, it's much more difficult for me.
I think it's easier to do in novelettes and novellas, but still you got to keep it simple because yes, you do not have all that much space.
In a short story, you really don't have much room for subplots.
No.
And in an honest, if we're being honest, plot complications often come from subplots. Something that's going on concurrently with what you're doing suddenly veers left into your lane of traffic, and you're having to yank the wheel to the side to avoid the mother-in-law barreling through the scene.
Or Harvey Korman laughing his ass off on the side.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or your co-host saying ridiculously funny things that are nowhere near the script.
That would never happen.
It happened with Harvey Korman all the time.
It did, because Tim Conway was a clever bastard. I love short fiction because you can get that focus, because you can just get into a really interesting character and walk around in their skin and find out who they are and find nuanced ways to get the reader to understand who these people are, and then take them on this ride. Inevitably, I go to pretty dark places in my fiction, but it's fun. I want to do it again. I want to learn how to do it again. It's been too damn long. It's just been too damn long. I need to write vignettes again, because that's what short stories are to me. Just vignettes. Just
remember, when you're having seafood down in the bottom of the ocean, you can have the crustaceans have these big crackers to open up the people in the suits and eat them.
Scott Sigler has a story called The Tank. And it's basically, if you haven't read it, you really should. It's creepy as hell. Basically, it is these people find themselves in a situation, and the horror is that basically that situation is flipped. So basically, it takes place at the alien equivalent of a sizzler or whatever with a live lobster tank. I'll just leave it at that. But it's a really crazy story. A really crazy story. It's a good
spoiler here. Things are going to be fine.
Yeah, things will be fine. Things will be fine. Everybody lives happily ever after. No. And I think that's part of the fun of short stories is you can do stuff like that would not work for an entire novel. It's really just going after one idea and getting it done, in 3,000 to 5,000 words. That's kind of what it is. Somebody like me likes to write something like Mimes, which is more along the lines of 7,500 words, or Lamashtu, which I think is 10,000 or 12,000. I'm comfortable writing those too because of the complications I can do, but they're short. They're just, this is what happens and we're done. There's no need for 5 follow-up books. There's no reason for it to be, a 100,000 words. It's just get in and get out. If there's no there, don't try and force one.
The story that I was writing for the latest anthology, it has, I think, maybe 6 scenes to it, 5 or 6 scenes to get through. And the plot complications involve things like, oh, yeah, that escort we thought we were going to be having in this fight, yeah, that's not happening after all.
Where's our air cover? Why are we suddenly in the Cuban Revolution all over again? Bay of Pigs.
Mm-hmm.
We have no air cover. Oh my God. Yeah, it could be a problem.
Things like that. It doesn't have to be a huge complication, but getting into an unexpected fight, having things unexpectedly break. Remember, as a side piece here, you can have coincidence in your stories as long as they don't help the characters. Coincidences that are bad are okay. Coincidences that solve problems are bad. Don't do those.
Yeah, that's the difference between Deus Ex Machina and story. And which brings up something we should probably talk about after the show. Anyway, that makes a big difference. I love that also comes with the complication. Something we saw earlier comes back and bites us completely. And I think that also determines the kind of story you're telling. Like in oh God, what is it? Shaun of the Dead. They have this coincidental meeting with some people and they meet them again. And at the end, they're the reason, the story ends the way it is, which if you haven't seen that film, you really ought to. It's got some really disgusting scenes in it, but it is absolutely hilarious. Big comment on culture, huge comment on culture. Anyway, that notwithstanding, the bottom line is that in that case, the coincidence ends the movie the way it is. And you forgive it because of the kind of story it is. There are other stories where that will not work. The characters are fighting. It's just like in, Saving Private Ryan, which I can understand. They're up against the wall. They're all going to die. They're all dying or they're already dead. And then out of nowhere, the tank killers come in. And it was kind of abrupt, but at the same time, you knew it was coming. It's just when it happened felt, very, very much like that. But you forgave it because you wanted it. You wanted it for the characters. So that's why you forgave it. And there's so many movies like that. And there's a lot of things, if you make them, really root for the character to the point where they understand who these people are and they care about them, they're going to want anything to happen to save them.
As a little side story with Saving Private Ryan, did you know that the director made sure that the actors treated who was it that was playing Ryan in that? Matt Damon, wasn't it?
Oh, Ryan, right. Yeah, Matt Damon. Yes.
It was Matt Damon. They put everybody else through basically their own little mini boot camp and stuff like that, except they didn't make Matt Damon do it. So he introduced them disliking Matt Damon.
Yes.
Because of that. And it bled through into the movie a little bit, I think, which was his intent.
It worked.
It worked.
And he didn't look nearly as comfortable as the other characters of what they were doing. So, that worked. That worked very well. I did not know that. Characters are bastards. I can't remember what director, and I can't remember if it was play or a movie, but his wife was in the lead role, and whatever lead roles, whatever he directed, she was already in there. When she took a telephone call, he would talk dirty to her.
Oh, that's rough.
Every time she picked up the phone, it would be raunchy jokes and other shit and pillow talk and the whole 9 yards while she had to do a dramatic scene.
That's fucked up.
Yeah, really fucked up. There's some really cruel people out there. But I mean, you see that scene in movies all the time, and I'm sure you've actually witnessed or partaken in reality where you start a serious phone conversation, somebody comes over and tickle you or trying to, they feel ignored, so they're doing things like that, and you're still trying to have this conversation while ignoring your lover's attempts to make.
I got to tell you though, if you ignore them, they get worse.
Exactly. Exactly. And those are always fun scenes too. But yeah, it feels like that's the kind of thing that they would do. I remember Stravinsky. I don't remember hearing this. I think it was Stravinsky hated this cello player that was in the orchestra. So when they went to do his symphony, it was like not a symphony, it was a recital or whatever. He gave the brass. He gave the brass and the rest of the orchestra a different timesheet, a different measure, beat, everything than he gave to the cello player. So the cello player was lost, and apparently he was just cackling in the back of the auditorium. So thought that was another kind of funny story. There you go. Piss me off, I'm a writer. I'll put you in my story and kill you, kind of thing.
You were talking about having a character that is totally unsuited for whatever plot complications you're throwing at him there. Well, I don't know what the entire conversation about lewd behavior got me thinking about. The next time you have an alien invasion, you need to go ahead and have the point of view character be a porn star. Completely unsuited to anything involved with saving the universe.
Isn't that Flash Gordon?
No, that's Flesh Gordon.
Flesh Gordon. Rule 34, people. Rule 34.
If you've never seen Flesh Gordon, well, allow me to assure you it's different than the other movie.
Take your word for it. So it's no longer a fleshlight, it's a Gordon light.
Well, we certainly did go there, didn't we?
Oh, you started that. You took us down that road. I just said the next logical thing.
You mentioned Flesh Gordon before I did. I am not responsible.
I said Flash Gordon.
That's not what I heard.
I said Flash Gordon.
Mm-hmm. The court of public opinion and replay will show the facts the way they are.
Patrons, listeners, viewers, this is the hell I have. This is the hell I live with.
But now that getting back to what we were actually talking about, I could see writing some ludicrous story involving alien invasions or a post-apocalyptic story involving a porn star. That would be kind of actually fun to write. And I'm being serious, because they would be so out of their depth that it would be an amazing story to write.
Oh God, now you said that, I have this line stuck in my head. Your dick is not currency here.
I can see scenes where that might not be true.
Yeah, so can I. I have to cut all this shit in editing. The big old censored bar across it.
Seriously, I'm not even talking any erotic scenes in that. Taking a character like a porn star that doesn't have the same type of real world applicable skills to whatever story you're telling is great. Hey, you could easily go ahead and pick somebody that serves your coffee at Starbucks to be the hero of a post-apocalyptic story. They don't have the skills that they need to make things happen. They're going to have to scramble.
No, Zombieland. Great movie for that. All those characters are just completely unsuited to do anything of any of the things that they're doing, either mentally or skill wise. I mean, and the lead character, the main character, is a kid. He's a nerd. You don't know what the hell he's doing. He's just figuring it out as he goes along. And that's what makes it fun. It makes it unlikely. That's why Americans love the underdog until we don't. That's a completely different conversation. But the underdog is always somebody who's not seen as being particularly intelligent or skilled enough to take on whatever task it is they're taking. And as characters being underdogs is a freaking mainstay, I think, of genre fiction.
There was a fantasy novel or a fantasy movie that I can't remember the title of that involved a short person having to save a baby. It was like 30 years ago, 20 or 30 years ago. It had Val Kilmer as the swordsman in there that was assisting the hero. Val Kilmer.
Willow? You're talking
Yes,
about Willow.
Willow. I'm talking about Willow. Val Kilmer was purportedly the greatest swordsman in the world, and he held a sword for like 20 seconds in that movie. Literally, only about 20 seconds because he never could get his hands on a sword.
Yeah, they disarmed him at the beginning, and he really never managed to get one again.
And so everything he was doing, it was not involving his strength.
Yeah. Yeah. Person who doesn't know how to ski suddenly needs to get down a mountain. Well, guess we're going to learn
one way or the other.
One way or the other. One of those types of things. Yeah, I think that makes for interesting stories and interesting characters where they have no idea what the hell they're doing, and it's just a lot where they know what they're doing, but you've taken their toys away. Imagine Tony Stark without his Iron Man suit trying to solve any of the problems that he solves when he's in his Iron Man suit. How does David Banner react if he can't turn into the Hulk? I mean, obviously I'm using comic book movies, but those seem to be in everybody's mind at the moment. So point is take that away.
There's a comic strip that I can think of. It was a team up between Superman and Spider-Man. It was one of those crossovers between DC and Marvel. And in the midst of it, the villain is basically set up a nuclear reactor to fail. And so that's the kind of shit you need Superman there for. So he says, Spider-Man, shut off the reactor while I hold this thing from exploding. And he dives through the wall of concrete into the reactor core to hold it down. And Spider-Man's going, I'm a high school student.
Yeah,
I don't know how to turn off a nuclear reactor.
There's 14,000 switches and a computer that wants to speak to me in Unix. I have no idea how any of this works.
So he had to improvise. He basically had to reach for a control and let his spider sense go, no, don't touch that control until he found the one that was the right one.
God. I think that's the kind of thing that I just love to write. I just love to write. Okay, we're stuck. Now what? Put your characters in mortal danger and take away their toys and see what happens. It's just fun.
I agree.
And we're bastards for doing it. But yeah, we're going to make you care about a character and then do horrible things to them.
Paul will do a lot more horrible things than me.
That's just because you're a wuss.
It's true.
You haven't found your dark streak yet.
Probably won't.
Oh, it'll happen at some point. You'll have an idea for a book and just go,
I've had dark ideas. I just never write them.
I write them to exercise them for my freaking skull. So
I write those kind of stories poorly, so I don't write them. Remember when I tried to write a horror story? It wasn't. It was a paranormal romance. Because I just can't help myself.
You are such a failure. Complete and total failure.
What a hack.
Well, I guess we should draw this to a close. We have beat this topic to death, or actually these two topics, which are related. So yes, character and plot. There we go. How's that sound?
I think it sounds great.
All right, then. Well, if you want to tell us we missed something or you want to disagree with us or thank us, that happens occasionally, you can write us. You can send an email to show@devrobotssociety.com. You can tweet me at Paul_E_Cooley, or you can join our Facebook group, which is Listeners of the Dev Robot Society, where all the crazy happens. Lots of conversations and advice given. Don't know how good it is if Terry or I were giving it, but that's where you can get in on conversations to see all the stuff that's going on. We would be remiss if we didn't thank our wonderful host, Pod Hoster, for hosting all 15 bazillion episodes of the Dev Robot Society. If you want to support us, before I get to that, you can subscribe to the podcast at devrobotsociety.com, or you can search for it on iTunes. You can also catch us on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/DRS podcast. And now, if you want to support us, besides buying books, obviously, you can become a Patreon patron, where for as little as $1 a month, you can get access to exclusive content. And if you're at the $10 level, we read your name off Let's see.
And all the crazy you put in quotes in the middle of it.
Let's see what we got this week. Sue, you're writing what now, Bayman? We need to change that. JD Barker, Kason Von Deal, Isabel Cushy, Rick Shaw, Lisa Slack, Sandy Manpants, Cheryl Winters, Tracy Bodine, John Kilgallen, Devin Lee, Nathan is out of ideas petty. Get on that, Nathan. Drew, my work in progress, hates me Bernardi, Chris Winder, Andre Conde Moraes, DJ Chamberlain. Is that the last? And J.R. Handley. There we go. Thank you, patrons, for your support. Keeps us on the airwaves, helps us pay for hosting and all the other costs that are incurred. Not to mention keeping Terry in beard oil. It's all about the beard oil.
I need to use beard oil because, it's just out of control here.
Yeah, you need to get that beard oil on there and,
If this wasn't July, I'd be having kids stop me and ask me for things for Christmas.
I can't wait to see what happens in December. Look, Mommy, it's Santa.
Ho, ho, ho.
Yeah. Anyway, did I get everything? Did I cover everything?
I think so.
All right. So let's get out of here, folks. We'll see you next week. Say goodbye, Terry.
Hasta la vista, baby.
And adios.